Well, let's leave Riyadh temporarily and speak to Halim Shebaya, who is in Beirut. He's a Middle East researcher and political analyst. Welcome to the programme. Just how much pressure is the relationship between the US and Saudi Arabia under, following not least the nuclear deal with Iran?
There's definitely a bit of tension between Saudi Arabia and the US, but I think it's also important to put this relationship in context. There is obviously a difference when we're discussing Obama's comments, especially those that were in the Atlantic magazine with the Obama Doctrine article. But when we're discussing the US-Saudi relationship as two countries, their alliance on one level is still very much a strong alliance. One can only point to the weapons deals that have been conducted under Obama's term, a record number of sales to Saudi Arabia in terms of weapons, including a new one that was signed last year for an additional $22 billion. So it's important to always have that in perspective. Also, one thing to point out is that when Secretary Kerry met with Zarif, the Iranian foreign minister, they met in New York. And then he came to Cairo, and then he went to Riyadh, and now, or Ash Carter went to Riyadh, and now President Obama is in Riyadh. So we're still not talking about President Obama visiting Tehran. He's actually in Riyadh. So at the level of the countries, the US is still very much an ally, at least on that level. But obviously you have a lot of tensions on the individual level, especially with the comments that President Obama did in relation to Riyadh, especially when he said that he mentioned that they were free riders, and also when he mentioned at one point, I think he's reported in the article to have said that he wishes that there were smart autocrats in the region to work with. So obviously these comments were taken personally, I think, and that was what President Prince Faisal mentioned yesterday to CNN as well, that they were bothered by these remarks. But on the level of the countries, I think the alliance is still strong, and this should probably be reflected in President Obama's words soon, I guess.
Regional security is likely to be high on the agenda, not least again because of the war that's raging in Yemen. What sort of things can we expect to be discussed?
I think, as was mentioned earlier, the emphasis for the US is the fight against terrorism and how to control Daesh, how to limit the spread of Daesh, how to destroy them wherever they have strongholds. And for that, that's another place where they do need Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries to step up their efforts. Obama was clear that he no longer wants to put boots on the ground in that sense. He had two wars that he inherited, the Iraq and the Afghanistan war. He was reluctant to enter into a new war. He wants to defeat Daesh. They're leading on the bombing campaign, but they do want the Gulf nations to step up. And I don't know if there were discussions about any boots on the ground or anything further in that regard. But that is the focus on that level. Because as we know, counterterrorism efforts require both combating the ideology of Daesh and ISIS in terms of getting moderate Muslims to speak up against their religious ideology. But also, I think President Obama might have alluded to, and this is what many people hope that he has talked about, is that the internal situation in the different countries needs to be ameliorated for the ordinary Arab citizen in terms of, because terrorism feeds upon oppression, feeds upon lack of economic opportunities, feeds upon lack of civil and political freedoms and the lack of respect for human rights. So I don't know how much of that Obama would have discussed, but all these would be elements in terms of regional security, both on the level of the bombing campaigns, boots on the ground, defeating Daesh, but also improving the human rights situation in the various countries.
Okay, Halim Shebaya in Beirut. We'll leave it there. Thank you.